All right, Chapter 5. The Serpent. The dragon Tiamat readily came to be confused and identified with an independent conception, the Serpent of Darkness, which was itself the offspring of the great deep and an enemy of the heavenly powers. The dragon of chaos, according to the tablets, was banished to the depths of the underworld, and sometimes the monster is described as having the body of a woman terminating in the coiled tails of two serpents, and by a natural transition was merged sometimes in the evil serpent, the monstrous serpent of the sea, the serpent of darkness, which is coiled around the earth. We have here a glimmering of the reason why the evil spirit was conceived by the writer of Genesis as wearing the form of a serpent. He introduces him without explanation with a prefixed article, the serpent, as one already well known in the current beliefs of his people. This abrupt entrance of the serpent upon the scene, as Baumgarten remarks, seems to imply that he had stood in some relation to the earth previous to the 6 days' creation. Of this relation, he says, I find a trace of Genesis 1:2, where the earth is described as a territory of darkness, of emptiness, and of the roaring deep. In such a condition of the earth, I cannot by any means recognize the beginning of the ways and works of God. In other words, in Tiamat, the destructive power of evil was already manifest. Its invisible incarnation was the dragon or serpent. And we can trace, as Professor Sayce has suggested in the Babylonian story, the reason why the reptile was esteemed more subtle than any other beast of the field, because it is associated with the sea god Ea. Now, Ea was not only the god of waters, but the god of wisdom. He had his dwelling in Absu, which denoted both the abyss or deep and the sea of knowledge. Depth and profundity have ever been synonymous with wisdom. The primeval Absu in Akkadian belief is situated at the head of the Persian Gulf and at the mouth of the Euphrates, because there was for them the entrance to the deep or ocean stream, the ever-sounding and mysterious sea. There lay Eridu, the good city, the original of the Eden of Genesis. There all worship and culture took its beginning. And just as the natives of our own northern isles, looking out over the dim mystic sea, imagined that they saw the immense sea snake, the kraken, which dwells below the thunders of the upper deep, far, far beneath in the abysmal sea, sometimes arising out of its depths, or else a water fay, which, mingling her voice with the sighing breeze, was often heard to sing of subterranean wonders, or to chant prophecies of future events. So the voice which was borne to the Babylonians from the deep seemed full of mystery, and its god, they thought, must be a god of knowledge. The watery abyss, Tiamat in its primitive sense, was thus the home and the visible embodiment of Ea. And he was regarded as being at once the god of waters, the god of wisdom, and the god of the infernal region. He was the lord of the deep, which, like the Okeanos of Homer, was supposed as a flowing stream to surround the earth in a serpentine coil. This binding and encircling stream was called sometimes the rope of the universe. More often it was compared to a huge snake or serpent. Then, by a natural transition, Ea himself came to be symbolized as a serpent and was styled god of the river of the great snake. This primeval sea serpent is evidently identical with Tiamat, the dragon of the great deep. One old Akkadian hymn, for instance, speaks of the strong serpent of the sea, which sweeps away the foe, another of the sea monsters of chaos. And as this serpent is closely connected with the god of wisdom, we discern the reason without difficulty why it is described in Genesis as the subtlest of created things. The Assyrian serpent of darkness continued in Semitic belief to be the incarnation of guile and wickedness, and became an apt emblem of the evil principle. We have seen, moreover, that this cosmic serpent of the deep was originally one with Tiamat, the dragon leader of the powers of night and chaos. Indeed, some cylinders depict Tiamat in the form of a huge serpent when assailed in the creation conflict by Merodach. The Babylonians believed the serpent as a beast coming out of the abyss to be demonical, to be a demonical being, as the Arabs still call a serpent a jinn, and give it also the name of Tiamat and sometimes Abu, the enemy, which in Hebrew is the meaning of Satan. And the two conceptions are fundamentally and originally one. When St. John says in the Apocalypse 11:9, the great dragon was cast down, the old serpent, he that is called the devil and Satan. There is a manifest reference to the opening chapters of Genesis and the ancient cosmogonic idea that underlies them. By the dragon in that passage is denoted a sea monster, the Tannin, so often referred to in the Old Testament as potentate of the sea and of the dark mystic world which hides the secrets of the hoary deep. Milton, with the divining instinct of the poet, reverts to the primeval type when he represents Satan. With the head uplift above the water, his other parts besides, prone on the flood, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood in bulk as huge as that sea beast, Leviathan, which God of all his works created, hugest that swim the ocean stream. We can trace how this curious evolution came about by the help of the Babylonian religion. Tiamat, the raging world of waters, is there the ideal of anarchy and confusion. A dark, illimitable ocean without bound, without dimension, where length, breadth, and height, and time and place are lost, where eldest night and chaos, ancestors of nature, hold eternal anarchy amidst the noise of endless wars and by confusion stand. This wild abyss, the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, of neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed, confusedly, in which thus might ever fight. What wonder that this turbulent discord came to be personified as the evil one by bad preeminence and the enemy of the gods. It was made to stand not only for chaos, which was a somewhat similar personification among the Greeks, Hesiod, Theogony 116, of aboriginal confusion as a gaping, open-mouthed monster, but for all the evils and disorders that proceeded out of chaos. In particular, it was the death-bringing serpent that first beguiled men and tempted them to sin. Thus, Tiamat, the deep, the source of physical evil, passed by a natural transition into the demon of moral evil. And in the same way, the process of creation, conceived as a primeval conflict between Merodach and Tiamat, or Bel and the dragon, i.e., between order and anarchy, the life-giving spirit and dead matter, developed into a moral dualism between light and darkness, right and wrong, God and Satan. To the ancient Babylonians, the origin of evil was the loud misrule of chaos, out of which this beautiful world of order was drawn by the superior might of the Creator. And so Tiamat, at first the personification of anarchy, became the ideal antipathy of all that is good and fair, and eventually the leader of the powers of darkness, the evil spirit. In one incantation, example, a Babylonian beseeches his god to destroy Tiamat, strike the unpitying evil one. It was an old Akkadian belief that the human race, originally innocent, was seduced by the temptations of the dragon of the deep, just as in the sacred books of the Paresis, the fiendish serpent, as agent of Agra Manu, Ahriman, the evil principle, strives to destroy or mar the world of the good Creator. This dragon, or misshapen body and malignant disposition, the enemy of all righteousness, was the prototype of the Hebrew Satan. The Babylonian devil, says Dr. Budge, is not much to be distinguished from the Satan we read of in the Bible. It is difficult, says Professor Sayce, not to trace in the lineaments of Tiamat the earliest portraiture of the medieval devil. When the Semitic faith existed in its full purity, Satan, the adversary, was but an angel and minister of the Lord, and the supreme God was the creator alike of good and evil, of light and darkness. The empire of chaos was really a stranger to genuine Semitic belief. It was a legacy left by the Akkadians, which was assimilated and adapted by the Semites as best they could. Tiamat, the aboriginal deep, is often referred to as the mother of a brood of composite monsters, half beast, half bird, the rudimentary creatures of a previous eon corresponding to the saurians and amphibious reptiles of an extinct world. Warriors with the bodies of birds of the desert, men with the faces of ravens, Tiamat gave them suck, says an Akkadian tablet. These two were routed by the sun god Merodach. The disappearance of these dragons of the prime that tar each other in their slime was a part of the victory of light over darkness of the heavenly powers over the titanic monsters of chaos. The German theologian Lang, though necessarily unacquainted with the late Babylonian discoveries, came to the conclusion on the grounds that Satan was originally the chief and center of the primeval world, in which colossal serpents, lizards, and other monstrous amphibia predominated. And for this reason, he thinks after its destruction he was designated as the dragon. He is a survival, the ethical giant fossil from the age of the pre-human Earth formation. But though that demon Earth has been judged and set aside by the formation of the human Earth, yet is smothered chaos, it has in various ways an influence on the tone of the present world's history. From time to time, the tones of the insular antiquity break forth. The billows, Tiamat again, roar and mingle sea and land, and masmata are exhaled from the swamps. Berosus, in his later account, says that in the primeval darkness, the abyss of waters, there existed monstrous animals of composite form, presided over by Tamati or Tiamat, which being unable to bear the light of the sun were exterminated by Bel Merodach. A reminiscence of these creatures, he adds, survived in the winged bulls and cherubic figures of the monuments and in idols like Dagon of different animal forms combined. These monsters, it seems, in the new creation were banished to the depths of ocean, the dominion of Tiamat, where in Bible times they still existed. In opposition, however, to the Babylonian belief, these Tenenem, or sea monsters, are expressively claimed by the author of Genesis as a part of Jehovah's creation. Elohim created the great sea monsters. Their nursing mother, Tiamat, which is only obscurely referred to there in the mention of Tehom, as if purposely kept in the background, came into greater prominence at a later period when more familiarity with Babylonian ideas prevailed among the Jews. In the apocryphal book of Bel and the Dragon, we recognize Tiamat at once in the dragon of Babylon, with which Daniel had so curious an encounter. In that same place there was a great dragon which they of Babylon worshipped. Daniel, refusing to join in its worship, undertakes to slay it without sword or staff. He achieves his object by taking pitch, fat, and hair, which he did seethe together and make lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, "Lo, these are the gods ye worship." Not only is this serpent god of the Babylonians an undoubted survival of ancient Tiamat, but in Daniel's mode of destroying it by thrusting combustibles down its open throat, there is an evident remnants of Merodach's, Bel's, treatment of his draconic antagonist when he burst her open by forcing storm and thunderbolts through her gaping jaws. This apocryphal story, as Mr. Ball observes, existed in Aramaic and Hebrew at a very early date. It may have been evolved, he suggests, out of the words of Jeremiah. "He hath swallowed me up like a dragon, he hath filled his belly," spoken originally of the king of Babylon. Both passages, however, are ultimately founded on the old legend of Merodach and Tiamat, with which the Jews became acquainted at Babylon, as the Talmud shows. We can see also that in the canonical book of Daniel, the imagery of the vision in the 7th chapter was suggested by Babylonian types. When the prophet saw the 4 winds breaking forth upon the great sea, and there coming forth from it 4 great beasts, one like a lion with an eagle's wings, another like a leopard with 4 wings of a fowl. In the Greek addition to the book of Esther, called the Dream of Mordecai, Haman, as the typical enemy of the Jews, is represented as a dragon engaged in mortal conflict with Mordecai as the champion of the righteous people, whose name is only a Hebraized form of Merodach, the light god. But though an aberration from the primitive story, the latter also takes the form of a dragon, or perhaps of one of the winged devas of the Persians. Some echoes of the original are perceivable in the circumstance that Merodach's victory is declared to be the victory of light and the sunrise on a day of darkness and obscurity, while a great flood, even much water, is an incident of the struggle. There was light and the sun and much water. It is the war of the religion of Israel against the religion of heathenism, elsewhere exhibited in Michael, withstanding the prince of the kingdom of Persia. The passage is as follows. Behold, 2 great dragons came forth, ready to fight, and their cry was great, and at their cry all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. And lo, a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation and anguish, affliction and great uproar upon earth. Upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. The light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted and devoured the glorious.